In my video presentation, I'm going to go over the disease Spongiform Encephalopathy, and specifically how it affects humans. Spongiform encephalopathy, by definition, is various degenerative diseases of the brain characterized by the development of porous, sponge-like lesions in brain tissue and by deterioration in neurological functioning. There are two common variants of this disease: bovine spongiform encephalopathy, which affects cattle, and Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease, which affects human beings. There are also other variants that affect sheep, pigs, and other animals. What is spongiform encephalopathy? It is a group of neurodegenerative diseases affecting both animals and humans. Neurodegeneration is the degeneration or breakdown of neurons, nervous tissue, and cells of the nervous system, specifically in the brain and in the spinal cord. It is characterized by progressive conditions that affect the nervous system. Two of the diseases that we will discuss are mad cow disease and, more specifically, Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease. First, we're going to go over bovine spongiform encephalopathy. I want to touch on the cattle form of this disease because it is from contaminated meat of cattle that have mad cow disease that humans consume that we acquire Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease in the majority of cases. Food that is given to cattle has the remains of other animal fragments of brain and or spinal cord that were infected. This brain and or spinal cord matter is ground into the feed, and once cattle ingests this, it also acquires the disease, which then can be transmitted to humans. Once the cow has acquired the disease, the cow loses its ability to walk, stand, and have control of normal functions. Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease. This is the spongiform encephalopathy of humans. It is extremely rare and has a long incubation period, meaning that it can take months or even years for signs to appear, but it is extremely progressive once the signs do appear. The human will lose ability to walk, talk, and control functions of their body. They acquire this disease from eating meat that was contaminated. There is no cure, and it is always fatal. What is the causative agent? It is caused by transmissible spongiform encephalopathies, TSEs, also known as prion diseases. What is a prion? A prion is an infectious agent composed of a protein and a misfolded form. They are also referred to as proteinaceous infectious particles. These prions are responsible for the TSEs. All prions affect nervous tissue and cause degenerative damage. Okay, so now I'm going to give you a little bit more information about what a prion is, so you can better understand how they work and how they can infect the host. Prions are extremely similar to a virus in that they are not alive, they do not contain any genetic material, and they take over functions of the host cell to reproduce and survive. Specifically, a prion is a type of protein. In our body, we have a normal form, and we also, if we ingest some pathogen, we can receive the abnormal form. It is this abnormal form which causes TSEs. And prions do not contain any nucleic acids or any type of genetic material. What helps prions infect a host cell and survive is aided by their virulence factors. Virulence factors are a microbe's structures or capabilities that allow it to establish itself in a host and cause damage. Not much is known about how or why prions can do what they do, but scientists are trying to find better answers. Altered prions do not stimulate an immune response in the host cell, which we are unsure why. Avoidance of immune response is one of the prion's virulence factors. They are also highly resistant to chemicals and heat and radiation, and they do not contain any genetic material. Altered prions are very resistant to heat and chemicals and radiation. So while they are very difficult to kill outside the body, they are impossible to kill inside the body. The book states that they are a hardy pathogen due to these characteristics. Evidence suggests that prions do not produce any sort of toxins, but the mere aggregation of themselves in nervous tissue is considered to be toxic. The structure of a prion is a typical protein structure, except the beta sheets are abnormally folded. How prions infect nervous tissue. Abnormally folded prions in the body are able to convert our normal prions into the abnormal disease-causing form. This accumulation of abnormal form in the tissue causes cell death and damage. This cell death and damage is responsible for the holes and the spongy-like appearance that is seen in the brain with someone with this disease. Here we have two images of a cross-section of a brain. On the left-hand side, you can see the normal section of a brain. There's no holes, there's no lesions, and it looks extremely normal. On the right-hand side, however, this is a person who had CJD, Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease. You can see with the blue arrows that there are holes that were caused from the damage by the prions. CJD is extremely hard to diagnose, and there really is no way to diagnose a person who is living. They can only tell if a person has CJD after the person has died, when they can safely biopsy the brain and look at the tissue. It is often thought to be dementia, Alzheimer's, or other neurological diseases. CJD has an extremely long incubation period. It can take months or even years for signs to appear. But once they do, the deterioration is rapid and death occurs within 3 months. There is no cure for CJD, and it is always fatal. Some of the signs and symptoms include uncontrolled muscle contractions, the inability to walk, impaired senses, altered behavior, dementia and memory loss, and the degeneration of the brain and the nervous tissue. Going back to mad cow disease, I found this image where the cow has the inability to walk or stand, and that is due to the degeneration of its nervous tissue. This image here is in regards to the human form of CJD. It shows the holes again in the cross-section of the brain, and it also shows shrinkage and deterioration of the brain as well. Here's a video that I found.
Love dragonflies. It's got the dragonfly.
For Kip Lavin, the warm memories of his 17 years with wife Michelle well up just as quickly as the tears of loss.
She's always had a smile. Her laugh was great. She was great. Really? Yes, sir.
In March of 2011, 42-year-old Michelle experienced a sudden onset of stroke-like symptoms, difficulty speaking, confusion, and odd movements. All tests came back negative, and she was sent home. But Michelle was still struggling.
You know, everything was not working. She'd put her shirts on backward.
Within a few days, Michelle was back in the hospital to stay. Stroke and meningitis were ruled out. Kip says primary care doctors and specialists were stumped. And then, without the chance to ever say goodbye, his wife was gone.
40 days, I think, from the beginning to the end, it was done.
The diagnosis, Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease, CJD. There is no treatment, and it is always fatal.
We call rapidly dementing illness. That's something that affects cognitive skills, memory, thinking, behavior, and it comes on rapidly.
Mayo Clinic neurologist Dr. Alan Axemet says an abnormal infectious protein called a prion is believed to be the cause of CJD, actually creating holes in and around neurons in the brain.
It co-opts the normal protein, and then it becomes a self-replicating or self-amplifying process, which essentially kills neurons and gets transmitted to other neurons in the vicinity.
Dr. Axemet says 90% of cases are sporadic, striking spontaneously without a known cause. The other 10% are familial, which was Michelle's case. Kip says that means their sons Cody and Devin have a 50-50 chance of developing CJD, a possibility he finds very hard to bear.
Now I'm going to talk about the mode of action of the prions and what they do once they are inside the body. The prion is ingested via the mouth and by food, and it gets into the body that way. Once it is in the body, it will accumulate in nervous tissue. This accumulation of the prion will cause damage to the brain tissue and cell death, and that damage and cell death is what will give the brain the spongy-like appearance. To the right, I have a diagram that is going to better represent what I just tried to explain. The green dots represent endogenous prions. Those are the prions that are normally found in our bodies. The red dots represent the abnormal prions, which we ingest if we eat contaminated beef. The red and green dot together show that there's an interaction between the normal and the abnormal. The abnormal prion then has the ability to convert the normal prion into the abnormal disease-causing form. Once it is converted, it is an ongoing cycle. The abnormal constantly convert the normal into the abnormal form, causing this massive accumulation in the nervous tissue. And it is this massive accumulation of abnormal prions that will cause CJD.